I guess I should start with how I got here. My childhood wasn't exactly picture perfect. My parents had money when I was young. Lots of it. My father's family owned big businesses in our area, and we lived well. But things fell apart when they divorced. Both of their lives spiraled downward after that. By 16, I was living on my own while they both sank deeper into drugs and alcohol. Neither of them held a job after I became a teenager. Both died homeless before they reached 50. I joined the military as soon as I could and never looked back. I put distance between myself and my past, both physically and mentally. When I was 20, I got news that shocked me to my core. My mother had been arrested for stealing a large sum of money from my grandmother, who was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. My grandmother wouldn't press charges, but the state did it anyway. According to the detective, my mother and her sketchy boyfriend were fueling the criminal underground in their area. This was the turning point for me. I always thought my mother was just a free-spirited hippie with some problems. Now I learned she was robbing her own mother. My grandmother was wealthy and terrified of being put in a nursing home, so she kept giving in to my mother's demands. Even after my grandmother bought her a house down the street, my mother kept stealing from her. She even got my underage sister involved, which resulted in both of them getting felony convictions for grand theft and check fraud. My mother tried to blame it all on my sister, claiming that it wasn't as serious because my sister was just a minor. A few years later, I was married with a baby and had just returned from Iraq. I had moved across the country to start a new military assignment when I got a strange voicemail from my uncle. He briefly explained that my grandmother was in the psychiatric ward at the big hospital in her town. He mentioned that she had left everything in my name and that he was flying back home. That's when I discovered that the document my grandmother had me sign when I was 16 made me the executor of her estate and gave me power of attorney. My unit gave me time off to fly across the country and handle the situation. What I found was horrifying. My grandmother's massive house was in shambles. My mother had destroyed the house my grandmother bought her, then moved into my grandmother's house claiming she was caring for her. The place was infested with fleas so bad that repair contractors wouldn't enter. There were needles everywhere, and apparently everything had been used as an ashtray. I still refused to speak to my mother, but now that I controlled the money, she tried desperately to worm her way back into my life. I always told her to get lost. My grandmother was deemed unfit to live alone. Being only 23 with a new baby and marriage, I made the decision to put her in a nursing home. I fixed up her house, rented it out to create income for her care, and went back home. But my grandmother wasn't one to go quietly. She got kicked out of the retirement home after breaking a coffee cup over another resident's head for snooping in her room and wearing her shoes. The only option after that was a psych ward. So my grandmother moved in with my family and lived with us for over 5 years until we couldn't provide the level of care she needed. That's when I decided to take action. When the state filed charges against my mother years ago, they placed a lien against her property in my grandmother's name for almost $100,000. Now my mother hadn't paid property taxes in so long that she was about to lose the house. She called me in panic, insisting that the lien wouldn't get paid if the house was auctioned, and begging for my help. I knew this wasn't true, but I saw an opportunity. I told her I would work out a deal to help her. I explained that if she signed the deed over to me, I would sell the house and pay for her to move somewhere else. My mother expressed immense relief, saying she knew she could count on me. I flew to town and she signed the deed over to me. Then her true entitlement showed. She started demanding that I use my credit to get her a luxury apartment. Her boyfriend chimed in, reminding her not to forget that they would need a professional moving company as well. Instead of giving in to these demands, I rented them a U-Haul truck and paid for a storage unit for 6 months. I put them up in an extended stay hotel for a short while. Then I fixed up the property and sold it to the same rental company that had bought my grandmother's house. I used the money to buy annuities for my grandmother that allowed her to live in a normal house with a live-in nurse and excellent care. She might still run out of money because of what my mother did, but she has some years before I need to worry about that. She's almost 100 now. My mother was on the street within 6 months. The last time I saw her, she looked like she had been living under a bridge, which she had. She was covered in sores, balding, and clearly on drugs. She had received a Social Security disability back payment that would have been significant for her. She died in a hospital less than 3 days later, partied herself to death. Her boyfriend just dropped her at the curb and disappeared. I later told the boyfriend I'd give him some money if he gave me the key to their storage unit, which somehow my mother had managed to keep all those years. I shared whatever valuables were in there with my siblings, gave the boyfriend $100, and closed that chapter of my life permanently. Being a first-time parent is nerve-wracking enough without dealing with road rage, but that's exactly what happened last Tuesday. I had just finished picking up some groceries and was heading home during mid-afternoon. My little one was safely strapped into the car seat, finally asleep after a fussy morning. I was driving extra carefully like most new parents do. About 5 minutes into our drive home, I noticed a shiny white SUV in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. The SUV kept getting closer and closer until it was practically touching my bumper. I tapped my brakes lightly, hoping the driver would back off a bit. Instead, they swerved around me, cut in front, and suddenly slammed on their brakes. I had to hit my brakes hard. My heart jumped into my throat as I heard my baby cry out from the sudden movement. I called back to my baby with a reassurance that everything was okay, trying to keep my voice steady despite my fear. The SUV sped up again, only to repeat the same dangerous maneuver. Brake, speed up, cut me off, brake again. This happened 3 more times in the span of just 2 minutes. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I was terrified we would crash. All I could think about was my baby in the backseat. I spotted the gas station up ahead and decided to pull in, hoping to let this dangerous driver go on their way. To my horror, the SUV followed me into the gas station. I parked near the front of the store where there were security cameras and other people around. I needed to check on my baby, who was now crying loudly. When I opened my door, the SUV screeched to a halt beside me, and out jumped a woman in her 40s. She stormed over to me, pointing her finger in my face. She angrily demanded to know what I thought I was doing, accusing me of almost causing an accident. I stood between her and my car, where my baby was still crying. I tried to defend myself, explaining that she was the one brake-checking me repeatedly, and that I had a newborn in the car. She dismissed my concerns completely, complaining that I was driving too slowly and that some people had important places to be. I attempted to reason with her, saying that her impatience didn't give her the right to put my baby in danger. She scoffed at my explanation, accusing me of being the type of person who uses their children as an excuse for everything. I tried to turn away to check on my baby, but that seemed to make her even angrier. She warned me not to walk away from her and asked if I knew who her husband was, implying some sort of importance or power. She grabbed my arm and yanked me back. In that moment, something clicked inside me. The self-defense classes I had taken during college came rushing back. My instructor's voice echoed in my head. If someone puts hands on you, you have the right to defend yourself. As she pulled back her hand to slap me, I caught her wrist, twisted her arm behind her back, and used my weight to guide her down to the ground. I wasn't rough, just firm enough to neutralize the threat. She shouted from the ground, accusing me of assault and threatening to sue me for everything I owned. I explained that I wasn't hurting her, just preventing her from hurting me or my baby. I called out for someone to contact the police. A gas station attendant was already on the phone. The woman continued struggling and screaming threats, but I maintained the hold. Those Tuesday night classes were finally paying off, though I never thought I'd use them like this. When the police arrived about 7 minutes later, I was still holding her down, though my arms were getting tired. The officer instructed me to let go of the woman. I released her immediately and stepped back. The woman jumped up, adjusting her blouse dramatically. She demanded that the officer arrest me, claiming I had attacked her without provocation. I quickly explained to the officer that I had dash cam footage showing everything that happened on the road, describing how she brake-checked me repeatedly with my newborn in the car, then followed me and tried to assault me. The police checked my dash cam footage right there in the parking lot. The evidence was clear. They also reviewed the gas station security cameras, which had captured the woman lunging at me first. The officer then asked the woman to turn around and put her hands behind her back. She protested, asking if they knew who she was. The officer responded matter-of-factly, informing her that she was someone being arrested for reckless driving, assault, and endangering the welfare of a child. The look on her face as they put her in handcuffs was almost worth the terror she had put us through. Almost. Later I learned she had a history of road rage incidents. My case wasn't the first, but with the dash cam evidence, it might be her last for a while. She was facing substantial fines and possible jail time. I've lived in this neighborhood for about 5 years now. It's a nice place with schools, families, elderly folks enjoying their retirement, and plenty of dog walkers like myself. The only downside is that my street happens to be one of the main entry points to the neighborhood, which means we get more traffic than the other streets. When I first moved here, I was shocked by how many drivers treated our residential streets like highways. People speed, run stop signs, and act like the road belongs to them alone. I've had more close calls than I can count while walking my dog or riding my bike, which is my main way of getting around town. The one saving grace of our street is what I've come to call the dip, a vicious depression in the road about a block and a half from my house. This thing is brutal. It will absolutely destroy the undercarriage of any car that goes over it too fast. The beauty of the dip is that it's hard to see until you're right on top of it, especially if you're not familiar with the area. I've heard the sickening scrape of metal and plastic hitting pavement more times than I can count. Over time, I've developed a kind of relationship with the dip. When I'm on my bike and see a car coming too fast, I'll wave them down to warn them. If they're being respectful, I'll slow down to make them slow down too, saving their car from damage. But for those who endanger others with their entitled driving, well, the dip becomes my silent partner in delivering swift justice. That's exactly what happened yesterday. I was coming back from the grocery store on my bike. The weather was perfect. Not too hot, not too cold. I was in a good mood until I noticed a shiny Jaguar pulling up behind me. I was riding in the center of the lane because there were people working between two parked cars. I could see and hear them, but the driver behind me couldn't from their angle. The driver of the Jaguar didn't like that I was taking up their road. Their engine revved loudly, the universal sound of an impatient driver. I looked back and saw wild hand gestures through the windshield. I muttered to myself that this was a neighborhood, not a racetrack. The engine revved again, louder this time. I could practically feel the driver's anger radiating from behind me. That's when I made my decision. Instead of moving to the side right away, I sped up. I'm sure the driver thought I was getting out of their way, but I had other plans. I was heading straight for the dip, and I was going to hit it at full speed. For me on a bike, the dip isn't a big deal. If I stand up on my pedals and use my knees and elbows as shock absorbers, I can sail right over it without slowing down. So that's exactly what I did, hit it going about 15 miles per hour and continued on my way. 2 seconds later, I heard it. The beautiful, satisfying sound of expensive car meeting unforgiving pavement. Scrape! Thunk! The Jaguar's underside made contact with the road, followed by the bounce of their suspension as the car smacked back down onto the asphalt. I didn't look back, but I could imagine the driver's face transitioning from smug impatience to shocked horror as they realized what had happened. Only then did I move to the right side of the road, as I had planned to do all along. The Jaguar passed me a moment later, now moving at a crawl. They took the remaining speed bumps like they were navigating a minefield, barely moving faster than I was on my bike. As they passed, I caught a glimpse of the driver, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, face red with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. He rolled down his window and angrily accused me of doing that on purpose. I just smiled innocently and asked what exactly I had done on purpose. I explained that I was simply riding my bike in my neighborhood, which I did do intentionally. The driver complained that I knew the dip was there and should have warned him. I apologized and told him I thought his horn and engine revving meant he was in a hurry, so I was just trying to get out of his way quickly. The driver glared at me, then rolled up his window and drove away, still moving comically slow over each bump and dip in the road. When I got home, I checked my rearview mirror that I keep on my helmet and saw a small dark spot on the pavement where the Jaguar had scraped. A little souvenir from our encounter, probably some expensive piece of plastic from the undercarriage. This wasn't the first time I've let the dip deliver justice to an entitled driver, and it won't be the last. I'm not proud of it exactly, but I can't say I feel bad either. Our neighborhood is full of kids, elderly people, pets, and cyclists like me. If someone can't respect that, this is where people live and play, then maybe the dip can teach them what common courtesy couldn't. The next morning, I rode past the dip on my way to work and noticed a small piece of black plastic still sitting in the road. I stopped, picked it up, and put it in my pocket. Maybe I'll start a collection. Little trophies from the dip's conquests. Or maybe I'll just throw it away. Either way, I smiled all the way to work thinking about how that Jaguar driver will probably slow down next time he drives through a residential area. I started working at what I'll call Odds and Ends Boutique right after college. I needed something to pay the bills while I figured out what to do with my art history degree. What was supposed to be a temporary gig turned into almost 5 years of my life. The store sold literally everything. Seasonal decorations, furniture, kitchen gadgets, pet supplies, candles, you name it. The job wasn't terrible at first, but management changed and things went downhill fast. The day this happened, I was working register 2 near the entrance. I was helping a woman who was upset about being overcharged for a seasonal item. She wasn't pleasant, but compared to what was about to happen, she might as well have been customer of the year. I apologized for the confusion and explained that I needed to call customer service since our registers couldn't process refunds directly. She complained that she had specifically been told a different price the day before and that this was very inconvenient. While waiting for assistance, I heard my coworker request a manager at Register 8 through the walkie-talkie. There was something in her tone that immediately made me uneasy. As I was still helping my customer, a man walked past my register heading toward the exit. He looked at us and, completely unprompted, told everyone to call the police because there was a lunatic over there. Then he just walked out. We turned our attention to Register 8, where an older man with thinning gray hair was gesturing wildly and screaming at my coworker, a retail veteran in her 50s. The angry man was shouting that my coworker had stolen his money and threatened to call the police. His voice echoed through the entire front of the store. Everyone stopped to stare. Nearby customers suggested someone call security. One woman commented that the man needed to be removed before he hurt someone. Even my unhappy customer remarked about how terrible people's behavior had become. When other customers suggested he calm down, he yelled at them to mind their own business, which only made more people stare. The problem was, our store didn't have security. The most we could do was call mal security, who would take at least 15 minutes to arrive, or the police for real emergencies. 2 managers finally appeared. One helped my customer, while the other approached the angry man. I started helping the next person in line, avoiding eye contact as the angry man passed by on his way to customer service. When things calmed down, I checked on my coworker. She assured me she was fine and explained what happened. The man was buying some items including $1 roasting sticks. She accidentally scanned one twice. When she tried to give him his change, he refused it and angrily pointed out the mistake on the receipt. She acknowledged her error and apologized, saying that mistakes happen. The man arrogantly replied that he never makes mistakes. When she suggested he visit customer service for a refund, he demanded $10 back immediately. She explained she couldn't do that and closed the register drawer. According to my coworker, his entire purchase was less than $8, and he was overcharged by exactly $1 for that extra roasting stick. $1. My manager later mentioned she heard the screaming from the back office. Impressive considering our store size. My coworker shrugged it off, saying she was glad it happened to her rather than one of the younger employees. After 30 years of retail, entitled people didn't bother her anymore. The man eventually got his dollar back at customer service and left. No police were called, just a grown adult having a complete meltdown over a single dollar. I quit that job about a year later when the toxic work environment became unbearable. But whenever I think I'm having a bad day, I remember the man who was willing to be escorted out by police over $1, and suddenly my problems seem much more manageable.